Welcome to Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast, where our goal is to keep you informed, inspired, and a little entertained on all things diabetes. The information contained in this program is based on the experience and opinions of the Integrated Diabetes Services clinical team. Please discuss any changes to your treatment plan with your personal healthcare provider before implementing.
Welcome to Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast. I'm your host, Gary Scheiner. I am owner and clinical director of Integrated Diabetes Services, and today's session is a celebration of dads with diabetes and dads of kids with diabetes. And I'm very excited to be joined by an old friend and colleague, Tom Karlya. Tom is vice president of the Diabetes Research Institute. He's a former producer for D-Life and a longtime volunteer with children with diabetes. But most importantly, he is a diabetes dad. His kids, Caitlin and Rob, both have type 1 diabetes. So, Tom, I only hit the highlights. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
First of all, thank you for having me. Seeing you and Barb out there, it's like the dream team of people who I've met over the years just because of your vast experience and the amount of different ways you look to constantly trying to help all of us in the diabetes community. So I am very grateful and honored to be here. I don't know what else you need to know. Well, I guess we'll go through it in our conversation. It'll come out. Who wants to hear all the things I've been involved with? My kids, I started out this world to be an actor. It's all I ever wanted to do. I was working in New York City on a show on September 26, 1992, when my wife beat me.
Let's just cut it off there. Your wife beat you.
Beep.
There's
beep.
More to it.
Beep.
Beeped you. Gotcha.
And had a 911 to call home, pulled to the side to a phone booth. Those of you who don't know what a beeper is probably doesn't know what a phone booth is. So I'll explain. I called in and she said, Tom, you got to get home. We're rushing Caitlin to the hospital. They think she has type 1 diabetes. Talk more about that in a little while, but that changed my life when I got to the hospital. I lived on Long Island at the time. I lived 3/4 of the way to the Hamptons. I lived in a place called Medford and don't live there now. We moved to South Carolina about 10 years ago. And but we were entrenched in the Long Island community. And at the time, we didn't know whoever knows what diabetes is. So we found out. We just immersed ourselves in as much education as we could find out. I made a promise to my daughter that we would do everything that we could to find a cure for this disease and to find ways to help people who have to live with it. And she was 2 at the time, so I'm sure I was talking to myself, but it changed our lives. I became an advocate. My first job in the diabetes world was for an organization called JDF. Now, of course, it's gone through a couple of different name changes.
Iterations.
Yeah, and certainly
they won't even comment on the newest name. I don't want to get into the heated discussion about it.
You know what? For me, it's the same organization with great people. They're the same great people that have been around. One of the moms who started that was a girl named Karyla. And I remember when I left to go to the Diabetes Research Institute, and I thought she was going to really lace into me when I left, but she didn't. And a couple of weeks after I left, I got a piece of mail. And it was from her, and she had her own calligraphy, and I opened it up, and she just said, it always gets to me. She said, I'll see you at the finish line. She said, I'll see you at the finish line. And so wherever I've worked, and, I always said it should never be this organization or that organization. It should be this organization and that organization and that organization. And look, resources are limited. Everybody can't give, to everybody all the time. But I know that when I found the Diabetes Research Institute, which was really the only full center of its kind. I mean, it's an 87,000 square foot building. That's all they do is look for the cure for this. And they have a clinic also. I knew I had found my home and where I would spend probably right up until this day and still working there just because of their belief that a cure can be found. And if they can't move it up the research ladder, they move it out.
Sure. So who better to be there than the man whose moniker is Diabetes Dad? How did that name come about?
Actually, that happened at D-Life. It was a combination of 2 people. I had this thought the other day. The late Paula Ford Martin, the world lost her. We lost an icon. She died at a very young age of cancer. And actually, Carrie Sparling, I had to answer to Carrie. Carrie was the editor. And she said, look, we're going to make Diabetes Dad you're gonna do a blog for D-Life called Diabetes Dad. And when I left there, then I started writing. I started a column, and I started diabetesdad.org. I remember going to GoDaddy and punching in diabetesdad.org, saying, I'm sure that's taken, and it wasn't. And I was like, whoa. So I grabbed that and have been writing monthly columns since, and it's been a joy. And when I was at D-Life, when you're a television station, everybody wants to talk to you. So when you're in fundraising and trying to raise money, not everybody wants to talk to you.
Yeah. Why I'm surprised Carrie didn't insist that you wear plaid everywhere and drive a station wagon just to fulfill the Diabetes Dad moniker.
Who I never said she didn't say that.
That would have looked great. I could see you doing that.
It was that name, and I correct people all the time. It's a Diabetes Dad, not the Diabetes Dad, because we're all out there, and some who are parents have kids with it, and those who are parents who live with type 1, as you all know. My mantra really is just don't do nothing. Just even in your own little world, in your own little space, people say, what can I do? Well, not everybody is, got globs and globs of money that they can just give it out to people. And not everybody has super amount of brains that can research to find a cure. But in your hometown, in your little world, whatever it is, you can make an impact in your community about this disease.
So we're going to spend some time talking about being a dad to children with diabetes, and then we'll talk a little bit about being a dad who has diabetes. That'll kind of be my role. Why do you feel that dads deserve their own special topic and their own special podcast dedicated to this?
Well, I think, to be quite frank with you, it's why do we get our own holiday? Mother's Day, there's Father's Day, because I think there are situations, there are instances, there are everyday experiences that are unique to us as dads. How just in regular life, dads and moms are two different beings. And I think it's extremely important that they're very well connected, and that it's that the kids know. And in today's world, it's even tougher. And it's talking to dads on their level, on a level that I know what it's like to be a dad and have to put up with things that are different than when they want mom, because it's a different job. I think I'm not saying that we're not emotional, but you think of a mom, you just think of somebody with open arms to hug and kiss your boo-boo kind of thing. And I think dads are not rough about it, but they're lean. People seem to think that they can lean on their dads and they go to their moms for emotional. Now, I'm not getting into, where are we in today's world, and moms and dads are interchangeable in a lot of different ways. And that's not my discussion point today. My discussion point is that in a lot of times today, the role of the mom and or the dad has to take on two roles because there are divided families now. They're melded families together. I was at a conference. This just blew my mind. And I don't know if you remember this, but we were at a conference and there was a guy there and he said, I'm divorced. I'm divorced and I'm here because I'm still the dad to my children with type 1 diabetes. He said, that doesn't change just because I'm divorced. And then the next guy spoke to him because this was just a dad's group. And the guy said, I married into a family with a child with diabetes. I said, wait. Are you both the parent and the stepdad to the same child? And he said, yes. I just burst out crying because so many times when two families come together, it's a real struggle. It's a real struggle when diabetes started. Diabetes is used as another wedge a lot of times for the conflicting of the parents. But these parents, and I'm sure there's still things that they have to go through, but they thought it most important, and both of them had their wives with them, that the child, if everybody could just focus on the child with diabetes, we're all going to win. Everyone's going to win.
Does it bother you that in so many families, whether it's a nuclear family, a divorced family, the dad often plays a relatively minor role in the child's diabetes care, and the mother seems to adopt or just take on so much of the responsibility herself?
I think it's communication. It boils down to communicating both the needs of the parents and the kids. For example, when Karyla got diagnosed, one of us had to quit their job. One of us had to quit, and one person had to stay home. She was 2 years old. In our lives, the only way we were going to make this work was for one of us to stay home. And a lot of people say, oh, so your wife stayed home. I said, wait a minute. We discussed that. I didn't walk into this and said, okay, you'll stay home and I'll go to work. We had a give and take, not just about the end game, but what are you feeling the fact that my wife was, I mean, she was an executive assistant to a New York State senator. I mean, she was hot stuff when she worked. So she's hot stuff now. I don't want to get in trouble. So she was really good at what she did, is my point. She was really good at what she did. So I didn't want to just assume that that's the way this would work. I wanted to know not only how we would do it, I mean, what we would do, how we would do it, what's your feeling. And then it's important for both parents to constantly check in. Again, this is the communication. I would come home from work when I was working 2 jobs. I was working for whatever diabetes organization. I was going to do the show at night in New York City. I'd get home at 1 or 2 in the morning, and I'd come home and my wife would be on our bed and she would be sleeping with all informational systems, all pamphlets and magazines that she had fallen asleep reading about diabetes. So, we both immersed ourselves into this, but at the same time, and I am not an easy person to live with. Don't get me wrong, she's a saint. But the bottom line is, if you talk about it, the father doesn't have to take the off to the role. However, how much he does is how much he allows himself to do and help his wife. It was not so weird for me to say, stay asleep. I'll take care of breakfast today. Or, even though my time home was very limited, any spare time we had, it was all about the kids. And I think it kept us strong. Financially, how we didn't lose everything is just beyond me. Anybody who goes through this knows.
The challenge with that is so many men are not talkers. They're not communicators. So when you have a child with diabetes or any chronic illness, how do you change that persona? How do you become someone who communicates more and talks more?
How many men coach baseball that have never touched the ball before? They do it because it's important to their kid. It's important to their child. If it's important to your child, you make it important to you, is my only short answer to that. There's a lot of things we do. I mean, I'm not exactly a petite kind of guy, but yet when kindergarten, I sat in the same small chairs every other parent did. I had no desire to do that, but we do that because it's important to our child. And I think that's what it's about.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep myself from cracking up thinking of you in one of those kindergarten chairs.
You go ahead, let it out. Let it laugh, Gary. Let it laugh. It was very funny, but
I just want to bust out.
Just, well, yeah. And it was, but you know what? But to me, that's the answer. It's, friction and friction will only get you heat. So you got to look at it and say, look, this is here. I can't make this disease go away. And you can fight it tooth and nail, or you can do whatever it takes to make it work. Whatever. And that means just that. Whatever it takes to make it work.
So how long have Caitlin and Rob had type 1 now? How many years?
Caitlin was September 26, 1992. And
you
Rob...
make me do math?
What?
But that's 23 years. There we go. All right.
Yeah.
And
33.
Rob?
That's 33.
92. See, you made me do math. You see what happens?
Well, that's because, you should be good at math. You have to do conversions.
Usually I am, but...
And Rob was March 20th, 2009. So he was 13. And it's interesting because he was diagnosed 4 days after my dad died. So when I talk to people and they say, oh, I've had the worst week. I got a flat tire in the supermarket. I'm like, oh,
they got nothing on you.
I can beat that.
16 and 33 years. Have you discovered or uncovered any silver linings to having children who have type 1 diabetes?
No, I think children are just a silver lining in themselves. Whatever it is. Mine have diabetes. Somebody else can hit 500 feet, baseball 500 feet. It's watching them thrive. I mean, there was this doctor put his arm around me when Caden was probably 6. I could still see us walking down the hall. I can smell the hall. I can do everything. He said, listen to me. You should hope for college. I went, I'm sorry? He said, you should hope for college. He said, this is you don't know how nasty. This is in 1995. This is a nasty disease. I said, are you saying she's going to die? He said, no, I'm just saying you have to be ready for whatever life throws at you. I said, thank you, doctor. And I looked him square in the eye. I got honest truth. I said, you're no longer our doctor. I said, we're through.
Is that before or after you punched him in the nose?
Well, believe me, we've learned to curtail those. But yeah, so I said, you're no longer our doctor. And I remember, you're going to get me to do this. When she graduated with her doctorate nurse practitioner, heading into a world of practice by herself, I looked up to the sky. I said, I hope you're listening because I got a couple words for you about school. It's just, so let's take this full circle. Watching them excel. I wrote one of my articles was Life with an Asterisk. Every single thing. My son, my daughter, my friend Gary, so many others, they do it with an asterisk. If you understand what that asterisk means, it's going to help in a lot of ways.
Do you think having type 1 has benefited your kids in any way?
Okay, let me go to my wife for this. I asked my wife, I said, would you change anything? She said, of course I don't want them to live with this disease. But she's got a lot of outlook like I do. She said they have become who they've become because of everything they had to deal with. So she said, I'm not so sure that if we pull that part of the equation out, that they become who they are. Now, physically, of course, she said, that's the easy part. Of course, they'd be better off. But it's just, however, you have to have a whole different lifestyle to take care of you. I'm surprised. I think God's got a great sense of humor because I'm sure he looks at me and says, we're not going to give him type 2 and we're going to see what he does with it. Because you would think a guy my size has got type 2 diabetes, but I don't. It's just, he's like, well, we took 2 of their kids with type 1. Well, probably should hold off with him. The truth of the matter.
I would want to read a blog by someone who just calls himself dad. You got to be diabetes dad, right?
Well, and it's an adjective I wear proudly, and not because of me, but because of my kids and being in this world, because of people like Gary and so many others out there who do things with this asterisk that are just amazing. And even parents who do tremendous things where they could have just turned and walked away. I mean, Harry Hall just is an Olympic swimmer, was an Olympic swimmer. He won more medals after he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes than before.
He won no medals before he was diagnosed.
No, he did. He actually did. It's half and half.
Not a gold.
Yeah, that
there was this Russian swimmer he could never beat.
And then when he got diagnosed, because he thought his career was over. Now his dad was an Olympian, and he worked real hard at it, and he got, he ended up with 10 Olympic medals. Now fast forward to today, the fires in California ruined Gary's house and burned every one of his medals, so they're unrecognizable. And there's a picture out there, you can see it, it's online, where the Olympic Committee called Gary, I don't know what country he went to, and they gave him all 10 of the medals back. All 10 of the medals back. And I cried because it's one thing to do things with an asterisk, but then you lose it. And then somebody else comes along and says, we recognize who you are. And there's a lot of, you know what? You don't have to be on an Olympic team. You can be on a Little League team. You can be on a lacrosse team.
You can graduate college.
Right.
I have to tell my patients this all the time. I have to remind them, the things that you accomplish day in and day out, you don't see these as accomplishments, but you've done them living with a 24/7 chronic pain-in-the-ass disease that has no foreseeable cure, and you're still managing to accomplish everything you do.
And
so
smile.
This is not like a baseball asterisk where they use steroids and you put an This is a good asterisk. This means you did it despite some challenges that other people just don't have to deal with.
Not only do they have to, they have no idea what they are. They have no idea. I'll never forget when my mother had 23 grandchildren and I think 34 great grandchildren. I mean, when we had family functions, but I'll never forget that we were at functions at my mom's house, a party, and Caitlin was just off the charts with her body was all rigid and stiff. And my sister-in-law at the time, she just said, we have no idea what you go through. We have no idea what you go through. And the world doesn't. That's why. And also, we don't. I never for 1 second thought I had a living clue what my daughter and my son go through. And I told them this. I don't. I can't because I don't have it. Conversely, though, you have no idea, and may you never have an idea on being a parent with a child with this disease. It's respecting.
But when I meet with parents, I explain to them that, I've lived with diabetes almost 40 years now. That is nothing compared to being a parent of a child with type 1. Because not only do you have a lot of all the responsibilities and work and effort that goes in, parents also feel accountable for every little thing. My blood sugar goes high. I'm like, screw it, I'll get it down eventually, But a parent sees a high blood sugar in their child, they take it very personally. So it is more challenging being a parent of a kid with type 1 than it is living with it.
Word from our sponsor. Byram Healthcare understands that managing diabetes isn't one size fits all. With a full range of CGMs, insulin pumps, and diabetes supplies from top brands, Byram makes it easy to get what you need, hassle-free, shipped right to your door. And Byram's team of experts helps navigate insurance so you can focus on living your best life. Ready for better diabetes care? Visit byramhealthcare.com/podcast or call 866-692-8024 and select option 3. And now, back to our program.
Now, tell us about, you have articles you write. Tell us about how people can get resources and information about being a good dad with kids with type 1.
Well, not to be all and end all, but if anybody wants, diabetesdad.org. There's usually a monthly column. I'm always looking for people to give me ideas on what they look at. But I think if you're out there in general, let me give you my favorite place to go. There's a guy on Facebook. His name is Tim Brands, and Tim has done Dads Battling Diabetes, the Dads, for a long, long time. And Tim he's about as regular guy. And it was the thing that was really impeccably encouraging about him is you watch this, one child got it, then another child got it, then another child got it. I mean, and he still runs this website and he makes it really emphatically correct. What you say in that room stays in that room. And, sometimes, again, dads, there's a whole bunch of problems that dads need to not only talk about, but understand. There was one mom she said, no, my child has slept in our bed since he was diagnosed. And somebody at the meeting said, how long was that? He said 2 years. And another said, I divorced you. He said, you can't be in your bedroom. The bedroom is for the parents. And it's just, you can deal with anything. You have to work through it. I don't want to say talk about it. You got to work through it. It's never that easy to just talk about it.
Shifting gears a little bit, anything you want to ask me as a dad who has type 1?
Yeah, there is. I want to know, was it, sometimes parents are, they're a certain way. So by osmosis, the kids pick up who the parents are. Was there ever a time where you had to say, this is what daddy has to your kids?
It's interesting. I have 4 kids, and because I've had type 1 long before any of them were born, to them, I think it was just natural that dad has diabetes. He, at the time, early on, he would prick his finger a lot. He might give shots. He might wear a pump. To them, it was kind of natural. And, they grew up seeing that. And it's sort of like if you grow up in another country, you just learn the language naturally. It's like immersion therapy. So I feel like my kids were immersed in my diabetes from the get-go. There wasn't a lot I felt I had to explain to them. But when they were old enough, I did teach them about what diabetes is, because there are concerns about the hereditary factor and whether they were going to get it or not. Why doesn't mom do this? Why do you have to do it? So that I did teach them, just some of the background. And as a diabetes educator, I've gotten good at explaining things in terms people can understand. So I'll use analogies that they can relate to and explain it in terms that are understandable for them. So I think any parent who has type 1, whether it's a mother, father, or other family member, you have to bring it down to the child's level and really put it in terms that they can understand and relate to. We've had fun with it over the years. I remember when the first CGMs came out, and I had a Dexcom STS. This is the first Dexcom. It was a 3-day unit. I would misplace that handheld receiver all the time. Or at least I thought I was. I had 2 daughters at the time, and I had a deal. If Dad lost his Dexcom, whoever found it first got $1. $1 then was good money. And they would scour the house, and those kids were really good. And then I learned later on, after they got a little older, they confided in me. They said, Dad, you didn't always lose it.
Yeah. I said they took it. It's like when years ago when the glucometers used to be, you pricked your finger and you put a drop of blood. Even the fact I'm saying it used to be, this whole conversation just amazes me. Put a drop of blood on a meter, a little flashing light, and it would give you your reading of your blood sugar. I didn't know this till years later because a lot of kids went to diabetes camp. And at diabetes, the girls taught each other that a certain color nail polish gives you a certain gives you a certain rating on the glucometer. It was so they keep the strip, and when they go to, then the mother take. Of course, when they went to the doctor, eventually you're going to pay your dues because the doctor says, why is your A1C, 8.75, and mother's like, can't be.
I'm wondering if Caitlin ever drew her little brother's blood just to get a normal reading before he was diagnosed, just to make it look good.
Well, she did. And I cannot tell you the closeness of him and his sister. He just turned 30, she's 35, so there's a good 5 years difference between them. And when she was probably 18, he gave her a birthday card that anybody would just fall on their knees because this kid doesn't. He just said, I would not be here without you today. And the fact that she's now treating patients and now works for the medical network here in South Carolina dealing with type 1 diabetes. I mean, but because he could never pull the wool over her eyes. She'd be like, just try.
Yeah, it is a special bond, honestly. When I'm at meetings, conferences with a lot of other people with diabetes, there's a oneness. There is a bond, this unwritten understanding we have with each other. That, people who don't have the disease, it's very hard for them to understand. But parents are the same way. Parents have a bond, and they connect with each other because they know they can look at each other in the eye and know, yeah, my kids had lows at 3 a.m. My kids called me from school because their sugar's 400 and they've got a test, and they deal with that kind of stuff all the time. I mean, I've got challenges, but it's not like that. I'll have a high and low blood sugars, and it does affect things. I hate getting lows, especially with my kids when I'm interacting with them. And
so I was about to ask you, I was going to say, can you share with us when you've gone through a low or a high where later you're like, oh, I don't know who that was, but I got to go.
Yeah.
Well, did you go back and visit it?
The lows, they're annoying, but I can deal with them. The really high blood sugars, they change my mood and my personality to a certain extent. And I tend to become a bit short-tempered and rude, and I'm just not myself. I'm not a nice guy to be around. I'm not Mr. Charming like I always am.
Of course.
Yeah, so that's not good. With kids, don't understand that. My wife now, when I'm in a bad mood, she just says, check your damn blood sugar. She knows something's up.
So do you circle back with them? To say, look, Dad, sorry. Tell me what that's like. What do you do?
Yeah, I'll apologize to them later. I'll say, listen, I apologize if what I said didn't sound like me, or if it hurt your feelings. I wasn't really myself because my blood sugar was very high. And I don't blame the diabetes, but it's kind of like Carrie says, diabetes doesn't define me, but it does explain me. Same thing. I take responsibility for it myself. I'm not going to say it's because of diabetes this happened. No, I behave this way because my blood sugars got out of control, and that's on me. But I do want them to know it wasn't how I really felt at the time. We do change. Low blood sugars, they're a problem too, especially when you're playing with kids, when you're taking care of them. It can be a real challenge. Taking the kids to amusement parks and had my pump site come out and have to go to the car, get a syringe and give shots all day. That sort of stuff's just not much fun. But there are challenges. It does help me though.
I'm going to ask you conversely, if one of anything that
one of them comes home from a party or comes home from trick-or-treating on Halloween and there's some stuff that looks pretty good to Dad, I've faked some low blood sugars over the years. I'm not ashamed. I'll do what it takes to get those treats. And it's like, Dad really needs this chocolate bar right now. It's for his health. Or if I'm eating something, and you've been there, you're eating something and you love it. You're eating something you love, and the kids are like, Dad, can I have some? And I'm like, no, my blood sugar's low. I need this, right?
You are so bad. You are so bad.
All right. So I got to try to keep the sense of humor. I mean, I think that's important because if we start taking things too seriously, it doesn't help anybody.
Well, I think there's a lot to that. I think there's a lot when you can laugh together at anything, because you certainly cry together a lot. Yeah. And so when you laugh, I mean, is it still a fear of yours that your child could be diagnosed?
Absolutely. My kids have some other autoimmune issues like hypothyroid. So it is something I'm watching. Statistically, if a dad has type 1 diabetes and the mom doesn't, the children have a 4 to 5% risk of developing it in their lifetime. And if the mom has it, it's about 2%. But still, it's worthwhile having the kids checked to see if they have antibodies that cause type 1 diabetes. If you have multiple antibodies, the chances of developing type 1 go up exponentially. And now we have a lot of things we can do to slow, delay, or even prevent the progression towards insulin requirement. So I encourage dads to have their kids checked for antibodies, as well as siblings. If you have a child with type 1, the siblings should all be checked. In fact, the parents should be checked. If you're an adult with type 1, your siblings should be checked. First degree relatives of people with type 1 should all be checked for antibodies. I don't want people putting their head in the sand. I think empowerment is important.
Absolutely. And to be very clear on that, you need to be checked not just once. That autoantibody can happen at any time. So you have to be checked. When we checked Rob spiked when he was probably 3 or 4 years old. He spiked to like 400 something. And then it came right back down to normal again. And then we went to, they said, people said, don't worry about what we checked him. Of course, and it was nothing. And then Dr. Schuyler, who's probably one of the foremost endocrinologists in the world, who's at the DRI, I was talking to him and he said, you have to make sure you check that every year. If you're not checking that every year, it's a moot point. So if you are going to check, make sure you keep it as almost an annual type of thing. So
yeah. And is there an easy way that people can be checked for antibodies?
Well, there are a lot of trials out there, actually. I know Abbott is doing Dr. Meneghini is doing a wonderful work with Abbott to check about the autoantibodies and what's there. And because that's another thing. One of my biggest things that I've been involved with in my advocacy has been the missed diagnosis of type 1 diabetes, because it's missed so often. It's a stomach flu. It's a stomach virus. There was Regan's rule. There was Kayses. There was all these young people who died at very young ages. And not to scare people, school nurses who are on the front line. If a child comes in and they're throwing up, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a stomach virus. Probably 90% of the time, more it is. But at least get it on the parents' radar that if it doesn't go away, they should probably, check. You can pick up a meter for a couple of bucks now. So
trialnet.org is the website you can go to. You can learn all about your options for getting screened, and TrialNet offers free screening all around the country. And it's a smart thing to do. Tom, I want to wrap up. If you have one piece of advice for dads of kids with type 1, what would it be?
Be there. Be there. As much as I say, just don't do nothing, you can use that in your child's life too. Be there. Be there for your child. Be there for your partner. Be there, because if you're not, you immediately take away 50% of the chance of them having as normal a life as they could possibly have. If you're not in your child's life, if you divorced, not divorced, whatever it is, if you're not there, 50% of their opportunity is gone. So stay in their life, be there, and then anything else that you have to figure out that you have to do, can do, will do, support research, take up the ball games, whatever it is. But you can't do that unless you're there.
Yeah, that's something you said early on in our discussion. Not everybody is independently wealthy. Not everyone can donate gobs of money to the cause, but you can volunteer your time and you can be there for your child to assist them and guide them and nurture them. I think what you said about having open, honest communication with your partner about the roles and responsibilities is very important. And even people who aren't comfortable communicating that way with a partner, you need to do it because, as you said, it's important to your child. It's very important.
And never forget the story of the kid who's on the beach and there's 10 million starfish. And he picks up a starfish and he throws it, an old man sees a starfish and he throws it back in the ocean. He walks 20 feet, picks up another starfish and he throws it back in the ocean. Sees another starfish, picks it up and throws it back in the ocean. He does this for about a mile and a half and he comes across this little kid who's been watching him the whole time. He says, "Oh man, what are you doing? There's millions of starfish there." He said, "You think you're making a difference?" And he answers, "I am in the ones I'm throwing back."
Mm-hmm.
So you can't be everything to everybody. Pick where you can. I did this. There's a mom from Texas. Her name is Kim May. And we started this thing called Get Diabetes Right. Here's something you can do. You don't think you can do anything? Go to getdiabetesright. In there, you have posters and flyers that you can print off. And all it is about diabetes awareness. We get no money for this site. We don't do all we have are education material that people can download, print it out, and put it up in the library. Put it up wherever put it up around town because somebody could see that and be, and then maybe it'll click. So education is never ending, and we have to constantly look for ways to let people know that this disease can sneak up on anybody.
You're right on, Tom. And to you and all the other dads out there, whether you have a child with type 1 or live with type 1 yourself, we love you. And if there's anything you ever need, you reach out. Our team at Integrated Diabetes is here to help with whatever your needs are.
And you have been. I've called on you. I've called on you when we've had people in need. And Gary, you certainly have been there. And we appreciate all the work that you do, not only here, but in your practice as well.
Thanks for putting your trust in us. So thank you, Tom. The links you mentioned are going to be in our show notes. So I am Gary Scheiner, reminding everyone out there to keep thinking like a pancreas.
Happy Father's Day.
Thanks for tuning in to Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like, follow, or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast is brought to you by Integrated Diabetes Services, where experience meets expertise, passion meets compassion, and diabetes care is personal because we live it too. Our team of clinicians, all living with type 1 diabetes, understands the challenges firsthand. We're here to help no matter where you are in the world. From glucose management to self-care strategies, the latest tech, sports and exercise, weight loss, type 1 pregnancy, and emotional well-being, we've got you covered. We offer consultations in English and Spanish via phone, video chat, email, and text. Want to learn more? Visit integrateddiabetes.com or email info@integrateddiabetes.com to schedule a consultation. On behalf of Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast, I'm Gary Scheiner, wishing you a fantastic week ahead. And don't forget to think like a pancreas.